Good afternoon, my dear student. Previous session we discussed about the expression for amplitude modulations, advantages of amplitude modulations, disadvantages of amplitude modulations, and amplitude modulations of frequency spectrum, frequency modulations of frequency spectrum, and comparison of AM and FM. This is concept of the modulations. Today the new concept of the communication, that is demodulation. Demodulations, we have discussed about what is demodulations, necessity of demodulations, rectifications in demodulations, AM detector, and the last important will be there, that is a super heterodyne receiver, block diagram of square wave detector. Now today only discuss about what is demodulation, where it is used for the demodulations, how to rectify the demodulations, and demodulations which is used in amplitude modulation where it is detecting. Now today we'll discuss about it. First we have to see the key points. Key points is there, the statement, necessity of demodulations, rectification of demodulation, AM detector. First, statement. What is a statement demodulations? We have to know the modulations. Modulations means to carry the signal from transmitter to receiving high frequency signals to the low frequency signal. That is, they carry the low frequency signal, the wave or the radio wave or audio wave or video wave, the whole process which have to carry the low frequency signals of the modulation process. But the demodulations is the process recovering audio frequency signal from the modulated carrier wave. What is the statement of the demodulations? Recover the audio frequency signals from the modulated carrier wave. Do we have to know the how to define? For example, the transmitter is there and receiver is there. The whole process signals, we go to the ionosphere, then we go to the receiving antenna. The process to carry the signals, that is the modulation process. The modulation process in the case of receiver antenna, the receiver's antenna to carry the low frequency signals. The low frequency signals are audio, video and radio. Then the receiving antenna, we reach the signals then only to carry the audio frequency signal, that is known as demodulations, which means the states at audio frequency signal from the modulation process. When the modulation process is over, only we carry the audio frequency signal from the modulation factor. For example, radio ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈಗ ಒಂದು ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಮಿಟರ್ ಆಂಟೆನಾ ಇರ್ತೈತಿ, ಒಂದು ರಿಸೀವರ್ ಆಂಟೆನಾ ಇರ್ತೈತಿ. ಆ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಮಿಟರ್ ದಿಂದ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ ಗಳು ಹೋಗಿ ರಿಸೀವಿಂಗ್ ಆಂಟೆನಾಗ ಬರ್ತೈತಿ. ರಿಸೀವಿಂಗ್ ಆಂಟೆನಾಗ ಬಂದಾಗ ಕ್ಯಾರಿಯರ್ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ ಗಳು ಏನಿರ್ತಾವ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಲೋ ಫ್ರೀಕ್ವೆನ್ಸಿ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ ಗಳ ಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಾವ. ಈ ಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಈ ಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ ದಾಗಿಂದ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಆಡಿಯೋ ಫ್ರೀಕ್ವೆನ್ಸಿ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ ಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾತ್ರ ಕ್ಯಾಪ್ಚರ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋದಾನೆ ಯಾವ್ದಂದ್ರ ಡಿಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್. ಸೊ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಡಿಫೈನ್ ದ ಡಿಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಟು ರಿಕವರ್ ದಿ ಆಡಿಯೋ ಫ್ರೀಕ್ವೆನ್ಸಿ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದ modulations. To use the modulations, how to define and how to impact the demodulations. For example, at the broadcasting communication system, will we know the communication system two types, one point to point and second one broadcasting communication. There is a single transmitter and the single receiver. So the broadcasting communication system, the modulation is done. modulation is done, which means the transmitter antenna of the audio signals to large distance of the receiver signal. When the modulation is picked up by the radio receiver, the modulations will be pick up the radio receiver. It is necessary to recover the only audio signal from in the case of modulation. This process will be known as the modulation process. In the case of demodulations, we have to see, I am telling that the demodulation definitions to take the statement. See the statement, that is what is a statement? Statement will be there. Demodulation is defined as extracting the original information carrying the signal from modulated carrier wave. I have to say the in this class first what is to carry the modulated wave. Modulated wave to carry the signals, that is the radio waves, only it extracting the original informations. So that is modulator which mainly used the recover the informations content from the modulated carrier wave. We have to statement, we have to say that already, that is to content of the modulation signals of the radio waves to carry the only the audio frequency signal, that is known as the demodulations. Demodulation is defined as extracting the original information carrying the signal from a modulated carrier wave and it recover the information content from the modulated carrier wave. The process which recovering the audio frequency signal from the modulated carrier wave, that is known as demodulations. So we have to statement of the demodulations. And how to process to see the block diagram of demodulation. See the block diagram of the demodulation. First one is the modulator, the second one is a carrier, and third one is a channel, and the fourth one is a demodulator, which means demodulation is the reverse process of the modulations to cover the message signals of the receiver. The modulator is there and carrier wave is there. The modulator wave which process carrier means low frequency signals and information signals to getting the modulator. Modulator which goes to the channel, which means the channel is RF sections, that is a radio frequency sections, which is channels of the RF sections is a amplifier RF section, because it is a signals will be weak, so RF amplifications will be processed in the case of channel. Then the finally we got the only audio signals, that is the demodulator. This is the block diagram of the demodulation process. And the next we have to say another block diagram of the demodulators. See the diagrams. The modulation signals low frequency, the carrier signals the high frequency. The modulator will be convert the high frequency of the carrier wave and low frequency of the modulation signals. Then we get the modulated signals, that is that modulated signals will be demodulation signals, because the modulated signals only audio frequency signals will be carried. And this diagram, RF amplifier, this is the antenna, receiving antenna of the container, and the RF amplifier which is the modulating signals, and the local oscillator, that is the local carrier signals, that is the high frequency signals, and RF amplifier is the low frequency signals. The modulative process will be acting on the baseband amplifier. Then we go to the loudspeaker, that is the loudspeaker will be proceed the only audio signals which modified the demodulator. That is also symbol of or block diagram of the demodulations. And the next one, need or necessity of demodulation. What is a necessity of the demodulation? See, the wireless signal consists of radio frequency. When the cases the radio frequency are the every time, that is the high frequency signals. To carry the modulated wave, that is the low frequency signal. When they carry the radio frequency signals of the receiving antenna, then receiving antenna reach the modulation process will be done. The modulation where when the time is done, then the case of the frequency becomes low. That is the high frequency signals of the convert to the low frequency signal. Why it is say that in the case of demodulation? Because the diaphragm of telephone receiver or a loudspeaker cannot vibrate with high frequency. Diaphragm or telephone receiver or loudspeaker, we have to see the loudspeaker. The loudspeaker in front of the diaphragm will be there. That sound will be dop dop. We have to see the loudspeaker, the diaphragm of the signal or speaker, which cannot be vibrate of high frequency. Moreover, this frequency beyond the audible range of human ear. ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ಇಯರ್ಗೆ ಅಡಿಬಲ್ ರೇಂಜ್ ಅಂದರೆ ವಿಚ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಹೈ ಫ್ರೀಕ್ವೆನ್ಸಿ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸನ್ನು ನಾವಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊಡೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಆ ಲೌಡ್ ಸ್ಪೀಕರ್ ಮುಂದಿರುವಂಥ ಆ ಡೈಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಇರ್ತಿತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಏನಾಗ್ತಿತ್ತಂದ್ರೆ ಆ ಮನುಷ್ಯನ ಕಿವಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಸನ್ನು ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ನೆಸಸರಿ to separate the audio frequency from radio frequency carrier wave. Demodulations ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೈತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಆಡಿಯೋ ಫ್ರೀಕ್ವೆನ್ಸಿನ ರೇಡಿಯೋ ಫ್ರೀಕ್ವೆನ್ಸಿಯಿಂದ ಸಪ್ರೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೈತಿ. ಆ ಸಪ್ರೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ನಮಗೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮೈಕ್ದಾಗ ಲೌಡ್ ಸ್ಪೀಕರ್ದಾಗ ಮಾತಾಡಿದಾಗ ನಮಗೆ ಸೌಂಡ್ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕ್ಲಿಯರೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿ ಕೇಳಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೇವೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಡಿಮೋಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೇವೆ. ಮೇನ್ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ನೀಡ್ ಫಾರ್ ದ ಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಈಸ್ to diaphragm of a telephone receiver or loudspeaker cannot vibrate with high frequency. Moreover, this frequency is beyond the audible range of human ear, so it is necessary to separate the audio frequency from radio frequency of the carrier wave. This is the main need for the demodulations. Then sound will be created and the audio frequency only hear that, and how to it is rectified. So we have discussed the rectification in demodulations. We have to know the rectifier, which is convert the AC into DC in the case of electrical component. Rectification means the process of the conversion of the alternating current into direct current. In the case the demodulation, where it is used, where is the important of the rectification process? Rectification process in the case demodulation is work done, then the next case will be not possible, because the modulation envelope on the positive and negative sides are 180 degree out of phase, which means, see the diagram, the modulation signals will be there, that is out of phase, 180 degree out of phase. The range will be 180 degree out of phase, because which is the negative feedback will be started about the modulated signal. So we have compared that 180 degree out of phase, positive and negative sides will be modulated wave will be carried. See the positive sides wave will be formed and negative sides also wave will be formed, because the modulated signals will be traveled. But the second case in rectification is not done, then after filtering the positive and negative animals would cancel each other. The rectification is not done. In the case the rectification process is not done, the positive and negative cases which envelopes would cancel each other. The waveform will be these wave and these waves will be cancel. So the rectification is a process will be going on. The waveform, the negative side of the waveform will be cancel, and it goes to the filtering action. So the filtering action, the original modulating signal cannot be recovered, thus the rectification is necessary in demodulations, which means the input of the modulating signals that goes to the output, but it not of the modulated signal, it is only demodulated signal. So we have to define of the rectification of the process. The phase will be 180 degree out of phase because the negative feedback will be going on. When the rectification process, the negative feedback will be cancels to each other, and the only positive feedback only in phase of the 180 degree will be travel to the rectification process, and the rectifications convert the waveform to waveform to convert the only as positive single waveform, and then it goes to the filtration. Filtration means which removes the AC components to the DC, which output becomes the pure DC. In the case the modulation wave, the waveform which is the detectors and the rectification process, then filtration, then we get the demodulating, pure demodulating signals. That is the rectifications of the demodulations. And the next one we have discussed about the amplitude modulation detector, that is defined as the AM detector. AM detector for the demodulation process ಒಳಗ ನಾವು amplitude modulation detector ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೇವೆ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಇದು ಫೆಡ್ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಟು ದ ಸರ್ಕ್ಯೂಟ್. ಫೆಡ್ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಟು ದ ಸರ್ಕ್ಯೂಟ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸೇಮ್ ಆಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ rectification process of the amplitude modulations. How to recognize where amplitude modulation detector where we have to use where in the signals will be presence, ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ಗಳು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೆಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಗತ್ತವು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಫೈಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ ನಾವು ಆಂಪ್ಲಿಟ್ಯೂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡತ್ತವು. ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ಗಳು ನಮಗೆ ಆಡಿಯೋ ಫ್ರೀಕ್ವೆನ್ಸಿ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ಗಳು ನಮಗೆ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಒಳಗೆ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗತ್ತವ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ EM ಡಿಟೆಕ್ಟರ್ ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ ಒಳಗ ಫೈಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋತೇವೆ. ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇನ್ಪುಟ್ ಆಂಪ್ಲಿಟ್ಯೂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಕ್ಯಾರಿಯರ್ ಫ್ರೀಕ್ವೆನ್ಸಿ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಅಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ರೆಕ್ಟಿಫಿಕೇಶನ್ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ ಆಗ್ತಿರ್ಬೇಕಾ ದ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಟೇಜ್ ಆಫ್ ಡಿಟೆಕ್ಷನ್ ನಾವು ಫೈಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋತೇವೆ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಆಂಪ್ಲಿಟ್ಯೂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಫ್ರೀಕ್ವೆನ್ಸಿ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ ಆಗ್ತಿರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಎರಡೂ ಸೈಡ್ ಪಾಸಿಟಿವ್ ಸೈಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ನೆಗೆಟಿವ್ ಸೈಡ್ ಎರಡೂ ಸೈಡ್ ವೇವ್ ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್ ನ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಫೈಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೇವೆ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದ ಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ 1, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದ ಆಂಪ್ಲಿಟ್ಯೂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ದ ಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟರ್ is 1, the 100% modulations will be given. In the case the input of the amplitude modulations of the carrier frequency signals is going on, then the detections of the signals will be not proceed. When the detections of the signals will be proceed, then the case the rectification process is going on. The rectification is the first stage of the detections, and the second one, the high frequency carrier signal is filtered out, leaving the low frequency signal which is the modulated it. When the case the high frequency signals, the wave signals will be travel to the pure DC. In the case of electronic component, in this case the high frequency wave formation or high frequency signals is a filtration, then the low frequency signals will be getting the output, that is the process of the AM detector. See, this is the input modulated signal and this is the amplitude modulated signal, that is the rectification process. And then next one is the audio frequency signals. Then we get the low frequency signals will be left, then we get only single demodulated wave. This wave form and this process will be defined in the case of EM detector. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ the detector rectified the input signals, the detector rectified the input signals. So either top or bottom half of the wave is removed when the case of rectifications, and a suitable filter is applied which removes the radio frequency signal. Even radio frequency signals anna remove ಮಾಡಿ, then rectifier wave will be getting the output becomes the demodulated wave. That is the process of the AM detector. So in the case the diagram will be shows that the capacitor filter, the diode is used, the transformer we used, and the capacitor is, and the resistor is, the resistance means the load resistance of the output, which means where the detect the amplitude modulation or signals will be produced which have used the diode in the case of half wave rectifier. Half wave rectifier means only one side of the electrical current passes through the load resistance and the maximum current flows through the load resistance. Then the cases we have to use the capacitor filter of the action in the case of detection of the amplitude modulations. When the waveform of the demodulations of the wave will getting the output when represented, which are used the capacitor filters and the diodes. This is the process of the amplitude modulations of the detector or AM detector. And the block diagram of the AM detector we have to see amplitude modulations, demodulations ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆಂಪ್ಲಿಟ್ಯೂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಡಯೋಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಕೆಪಾಸಿಟರ್ ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಲೋಡ್ ರೆಸಿಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಒಳಗ ಮ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿಮಮ್ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಹೋಗ್ತೈತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಫೈಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೈತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಅಥವಾ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ ಪ್ರೆಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಐತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ತಿಳ್ಕೊತೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ವೇವ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ವೇವ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಒಳಗ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿ ಈ ಡಿಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಟೆಡ್ ವೇವ್ ಏನ್ ಟ್ರಾವೆಲ್ ಆಗುದಿಲ್ಲ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಡಿಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್. ಡಿಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಫೈಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಈ ರೀತಿ ಮಾಡ್ತೇವೆ. ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ದ process how to detect the signals from the output. This process will going on the CRO cathode ray oscilloscope ಒಳಗೆ ನಾವು ಇದನ್ನ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟಿಕಲಿ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಸರ್ಕ್ಯೂಟ್ ಅನ್ನ, ಒಂದು ಡಯೋಡ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ತಗೋತೀವಿ, ಒಂದು ಕೆಪಾಸಿಟರ್ ಅನ್ನ ತಗೋತೀವಿ, ಒಂದು ಲೋಡ್ ರೆಸಿಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ತಗೋತೀವಿ. ಅವುಗಳನ್ನ ಕನೆಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ನಮಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ಸ್ ಗಳನ್ನ ನಾವು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಫೈಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡತ್ತೇವೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಫೈಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಮಾಡ್ತೇವೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ CRO ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಫ್ಲೋರೋಸೆಂಟ್ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಅಂತ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಆ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಒಳಗೆ ನಾವು ಈ ವೇವ್ ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಈ ರೀತಿ ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಆಗೋದ್ರಿಂದ ದೆನ್ ವಿ ಗೆಟ್ ದ ಡಿಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಔಟ್ಪುಟ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ನಾವಿಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೇವೆ. ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಬೇಸಿಕ್ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಡಿಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ ಆರ್ ಡಿಮಾಡ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ಸ್. ದ demodulations we have to define the key points. First of all, statement, necessity of demodulation, rectification in demodulation, and EM detector. Simply we have studied statement. What is the statement of the demodulations? Which is defined statement, it is recover the audio frequency signals from the modulated carrier wave, that is known as demodulation process. Necessity of demodulation process, the high frequency signals of the frequency signals will goes to the outside. It is a ear problems of the human, so we have to conduct the low frequency signals of the demodulation process, that is the need for the demodulations. And the third one, rectification in demodulations, when the input signals apply to the modulated of the carrier wave to carry the 180 degree of the out of phase to carry the positive and negative signals, only output, only demodulation waveform will be represented this type. So we have to use the rectifications to rectify the input of the modulated carrier wave, then it goes to the only positive waveform will be produced. Then the filter, we use the filter and filtration which removes the high frequency signals to carry the output only demodulation of the low frequency signals. Where the demodulations wave will be present or the signals will be present, to recognize the signals in the presence, to use the amplitude modulation detector. Amplitude modulation detector which are used the where the signals will be present to of the demodulations. This is the points of the demodulations process. We have to say modulation process which is the opposite of the demodulations. So today we discuss about this demodulations, necessity of demodulations, rectification in demodulations, and EM detector. And next class we have discussed about the very important of the demodulation process, that is the super heterodyne receiver. That is a very important. Okay, thank you my dear student.